That means that the chances are about 9 out of 10 that if you were looking at a madrasa in Pakistan or in the West Bank, and the little boys in that madrasa are being taught hatred and are being taught that their aspiration should be to be suicide bombers, and you ask yourself when you learn that, who's paying for that? Who's paying for those little 8-year-old boys in Pakistan and the West Bank to learn to be suicide bombers? Next time you pull into a filling station, before you get out to charge your gasoline, try to do what I try to remember to do. Turn the rearview mirror just a couple of inches so you're looking into your own eyes. Now you know who's paying for those little Pakistani and Palestinian boys to learn to be suicide bombers. You're staring at them in the face, all of us. $350 to $700 billion a year, just from us. So we have a range of serious problems in the Middle East. One I'll add is that because of its oil wealth, Iran, in spite of a terribly mismanaged economy, is making substantial progress toward having enough highly enriched uranium and fissile material for a nuclear weapon. That puts Israel at risk, certainly. It puts the politics of the Middle East into a very different cast than it is now. Oil revenues for Iran make that possible. And one of the things that is happening is that some of the other states of the Middle East, such as Saudi Arabia and Egypt, are saying, hey, you know, we need nuclear power too for electricity. Right. A number of the states who are asking that have plenty of oil and gas, so the principal reason one suspects they may be interested in nuclear power is getting into the fuel cycle, enrichment and reprocessing, and thereby moving along the path that Iran and North Korea have moved along toward having nuclear weapons. So another thing we can chalk up to oil revenues is that they are helping create a Sunni Shiite nuclear arms race in the Middle East, among others. What can we do about this set of malignant and malevolent problems of both electricity generation and the production of transportation fuels, all sourced in oil? Two sets of things I think are important. One is that we need to have a general set of incentives with respect to electricity generation to move us toward a much smarter, more resilient, more capable, more secure electricity grid, and toward using the fuels that we have, some of it sun and wind, some of it our own ingenuity in reducing in improving the efficiency of electricity use, some of it figuring out how to sequester the CO2 from coal-fired power plants and deep in the earth, so we don't have to worry about contributing to climate change. We need a general set of incentives to move us in that direction, and then to let technological developments help sort out which of those moves along the faster. The government does not do a great job in picking winners of technology, but it can at least produce the right kind of incentives for technological innovation. And it is technology that will provide an outlet for us in both of these areas. If we move over to transportation and oil, in addition to getting through the next 10 or 20 years and doing some domestic production, as I said, what else should we do? Over the long term, I would suggest that we want to do something like what was done to salt at the end of the 19th century. My friend Annie Coren, and sometimes co-author, thought up this analogy, and I like it very much. She says that in the late 1880s and early 1890s, salt was a strategic commodity. It was the only way to preserve meat. Meat is a hugely important part of the human food chain. It seems hard to realize now, but salt mattered. It mattered whether your country had salt mines. Countries fought wars over salt mines. it was a very big deal. The biblical phrase, "You're the salt of the earth," means you're important, not that you're cheap. Today we have salt on this luncheon table. Anybody know where it comes from? Anybody care? Are we salt independent? Who knows? Boring subject. Of course it's boring. We want it to be boring. We want salt to be what it is, a commodity that's useful, that's bought and sold in international commerce according to the laws of the market. Fine. Nobody controls their neighbor's behavior anymore because they have salt mines. We need to do that to oil. We need to destroy not oil itself, but oil's strategic role. The way the coming of the electricity grid and refrigeration and freezing destroyed salt's strategic role. How can we do that? I'd say there are a couple of things we should emphasize, but again, this is in the spirit of breaking a monopoly, not a spirit of saying this is the solution. How can we break oil's 97% monopoly over transportation and then indirectly OPEC's, some in terms of oil reserves, 75% or so monopoly over oil reserves? Or at least make it not matter any more than who has a edge in producing salt. I think there are two general directions that are important. One is electricity, just as occurred with salt. And the reason this is now a renewed possibility, because other than in California for a few years at the end of the 1990s, and in the United States back over a century ago when there were electric vehicles a little bit, other than those times, electricity has been a boring subject with respect to propelling vehicles for some time because batteries didn't change. Lead-acid batteries were lead-acid batteries for about 150 years, and the only improvements that were made in them was that you wouldn't have to use, don't have to add water to them. A relatively few years ago, the consumer electronics industry, cell phones and all the rest, began to put a lot of economic pressure on the importance of improving batteries. And it has happened, and it's happening fast. That does a couple of things. It separates production, potentially, and use of electricity so that you can use electricity in ways that you couldn't use it before. You can store it and use it in cars. You can store it increasingly and at lower cost from, say, photovoltaic cells on your roof, and then use the electricity in the evening. Breaking that tie between electricity generation and use, breaking electricity's just-in-time nature, is a rather remarkable development. I have a Prius, it's been converted now to be a plug-in. It has a larger battery. I charge it overnight. Cost me 50 cents, 5 kilowatt hours. I drive for about 20 miles. So that's about 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And then when I get to the end of that 20 miles, it's not nearly as serious as my cell phone running out of electricity because I don't have to plug in again. I just become a regular Prius. During the time I am driving all electric or nearly all electric, I'm driving at 1/5 to 1/10 the cost of gasoline. Now that battery to make my Prius a plug-in is kind of expensive right now, but the prices keep coming down and the efficiencies of these batteries keep going up. Electricity can change a lot because unlike hydrogen or natural gas, for which one would need a very substantial refueling infrastructure and a very expensive one, I was able, when I had my Prius converted to be a plug-in and be able to go 20 miles on electricity from overnight charging, I picked it up, and when I came home, I stopped at Walmart and picked up my infrastructure.